Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Now, you're going to notice a difference in the camera angle this morning. I went to film with my regular Sony camera, and it didn't come on. I turned it off, turned it on, rebooted the computer, and it came up. I started filming, and all of a sudden it stopped. So I restarted. Well, now when I plug it in, it doesn't show up at all. So the camera is showing that it's working, but I think maybe one of my plug-ins, maybe my FireWire, I don't know, but I don't know. Something has happened again to my camera. So going to have to use the camera here on my laptop. So here we go. Now, last Wednesday, I had done a really, really good video. Got to tell you, it was great. But we had this storm, and it ate it. This was a real life story of the dog ate my homework. I was not a happy camper because after I'd done the video, I thought, okay, that's a good, solid video. So what we're doing here, as I pointed out last Tuesday, we're doing a connecting the dots narrative. I'm going to look at some really key eschatological passages, and I'm going to show that they are the same event, the same time event. I'm going to show, as I began last week, with Daniel chapter 12. Now, I spent a good bit of time last Tuesday demonstrating that Daniel chapter 12 is not about the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. And by the way, folks, let me recommend that you get a copy of my extensive study of Daniel chapter 9. In that video, DVD series, I interact extensively with Daniel 9 and Daniel chapter 12, demonstrating, number one, they're not about the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Number two, that they absolutely were consummated and fulfilled at the time of the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. I'm not aware of another study quite like it anywhere. You can find it either as a download, you can have it as strictly MP3 at a reduced price, or in the full DVD package. So go to my website and look up special study on Daniel chapter 9, and again, in which I discuss Daniel chapter 12 very, very extensively. So, in Daniel chapter 12, we saw that Daniel foretold great tribulation, the resurrection, the time of the end. And oh, by the way, let me make a correction. Last week, I made the comment that Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 in the Septuagint uses the term Kairu eskatu. Well, it doesn't. It's not eskatu. It is Cairo suntulia. Now, there's not a world of difference between those concepts. Suntulia means consummation. Full consummation, full end. It's from soon, with, teleos, full end. Okay, so it's a compound word meaning the consummation. But nonetheless, I said eskatu kairu, or kairu eskatu. Kairu is from kairos, the Greek word meaning divinely appointed. So Daniel chapter 12, verse 4 predicted the appointed time of the consummation. The appointed time of the end is the way most translations render it. Good translation. So once again, we have great tribulation, we have resurrection, we have time of the end. Let me ask you something, folks, because this is incredible. Last year, I did a review of a book by Kevin Pope, Church Christ minister. And he tried to delineate between the time of the resurrection of Daniel chapter 12 verse 2, and the time of the end of verse 3 and 4. How do you do this? Well, it's because you have a preconceived idea about what the time of the end is, about what the resurrection is. And so while you're forced to admit, he believes that Daniel chapter 12, verse 1 is the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, it certainly was not the time of the end. So what Brother Pope does, he inserts a so far 2,500 year gap into the period at the end of verse 1 and says, verse 1, Antiochus Epiphanes, verse 2, end of time. And the time of the end. Well, that must be the end of time, right? Why is the time of the end of verse 4 not the time of the resurrection of verse 2? And by the way, former preterists are now making the same argument. Verse 1, Antiochus Epiphanes. Verse 2, end of time. Well, it's not end of time, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely not. So, here is Daniel predicting these incredible events, the time of the end. One angel asks another, when shall these things be, and what shall be the end of these things? The Septuagint, when the angel says, what shall be the end of these things, uses the Greek word peros. We would spell that P-E-R-A-S. That's in verse 6. Well, notice now, verse 9, Daniel is told, Daniel, go your way, for you shall sleep with your fathers until the time of the end, peros. So the end here that the angel is asking about is the time of the end of the resurrection, because the angel is asking, when shall these things be? What shall be the end of these things? Daniel was told to go his way until the time of the end that the angel had asked about, which is the time of the resurrection. And again, Daniel 12:13, the time of the peros. Now, Daniel chapter 12 is widely considered, men such as Brent Petrie, men such as Stephanos Mahalios, point out that Daniel chapter 12 is the clearest Old Testament text concerning the resurrection to be found in the Tanakh. Daniel chapter 12 undergirds many Old Testament or New Testament eschatological passages. That brings us to introduce our dot. Our first dot is Daniel chapter 12. The next dot is Matthew chapter 13. In Matthew chapter 13, Jesus tells the parable of the man who went out and sowed his seed. But the devil also sowed seed, and the tares grew up. His servants came and said, Master, should we gather in the tares? And he said, no, let both tares and wheat grow together until the time of the end, the telos, or until the harvest. And at the end of the age, the Son of Man will send forth his angels. And they would gather out of the kingdom all things that offend. So shall it be at the end of the age, Suntelia to Aeonios, or Aeonion. I always have a trouble with the suffixes there. So the resurrection harvest would be at the end of the age. Daniel said the resurrection would be at the time of the end, the soon telia. So Daniel's predicting the time of the end, And by the way, Daniel predicted this time of the end, the eschatou sunteliou. Eschatos suntelia. Jesus is predicting the resurrection at the end of the age. Are these two different ends of two different ages and two different resurrections? No. Jesus continued, after saying that the resurrection harvest would be at the time of the sending forth of the angels to gather out of the kingdom all things that offend. Then, Matthew chapter 13, verse 43, then shall the righteous shine forth in the kingdom as the stars. Wait a minute. Where did that come from? Daniel chapter 12, verse 3. Okay. So we have Daniel predicting the resurrection at the suntelia, eschatou, the end, the consummation, at the end of the days, the suntelia hemeron of Daniel chapter 12, verse 13. The end of the days is the way that many translations render it. So how many end of the days do we have? How many resurrections at the end of the days do we have? By the way, the end of the days is very clearly the last day of John 6:39, John 6:44. The last day in which Daniel would be raised to his inheritance at the time of the end. The Kairu Suntelia. Do you see how this is all flowing together, ladies and gentlemen? So once again, here is Daniel predicting the resurrection, the time of the end. End of the age, as many reference it, translated. It is the time that the angel asked about, the peros, the end of those things. And here is Jesus predicting the resurrection harvest. You would agree that the harvest of Matthew 13 is the resurrection, right? I don't know anybody that denies that. So Matthew 13 is the resurrection harvest, at the end of the age, the suntelia tu aionion. Daniel said it would be when the righteous would shine forth as the stars, in the kingdom. Jesus said that the resurrection harvest that he's talking about would be when? When Daniel chapter 12, verse 3 would be fulfilled. When the righteous would shine forth as the sun or as the stars. Okay, when did Daniel say, or when was Daniel told that his vision would be fulfilled? Well, remember, one angel asked another, when shall these things be? What shall the be end of these things? And another angel raised his right hand and his left, and swore by him who lives forever and ever, and said, it shall be for a time, times and a half time, and when the power of the holy people has been completely shattered, all of these things shall be fulfilled. Not some of them, as Mr. Pope, that I mentioned a little bit ago, not some of them, not even most of them, but all of these things. Now, folks, here you have the end of the age resurrection. At the time of the end, the full consummation. Is that not Matthew 25, 31 and following? If it's not, Do we have two totally different, separate, and disparate ends of different ages, different harvests, different resurrections? Well, according to Daniel chapter 12, there's one resurrection, one end of the age resurrection. It's not resurrection of the righteous separated by millennia by another end of the age resurrection of the unjust. Okay, so what do we have? We have a dot, Daniel chapter 12. End of the age, resurrection, just and unjust. Matthew chapter 13, harvest, end of the age, just and unjust. Gather the wheat into the barn, unjust, going away into everlasting condemnation. Oh, Daniel chapter 12, the just into everlasting life, unjust into everlasting condemnation. Daniel chapter 12, the end of the age. Matthew 13, end of the age, using the very words of Daniel. Daniel was told it would be when the power of the holy people was completely shattered. There are two dots, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the end of the age resurrection was to be at the coming of the Lord, in judgment, in the resurrection, in AD 70. Unless you want to identify the power of the holy people being destroyed as some other time than AD 70. Out of time. I'll see you on the flip side.